think that covering so many different categories of motorsport, whether it be from lawnmowers to bikes flying around Macau to the Monaco Grand Prix, having that sort of such a diverse experience in all those different motorsport categories, does that inform you to know what to look for in every race? You're not only thinking about the category you're at that weekend, but you're taking a bit of knowledge from this race and a bit of knowledge from this race. How do you, is that just a subconscious sort of automatic thing where you feel like you know what's good, or are you remembering direct lessons?
It's subconscious, but there's also a huge element where um, covering an entire season of something and nothing else, it does lead you to like creative ruts where you're only seeing the same people, the same cars, similar tracks. I feel if I was only doing one category, it would be very easy to fall into just taking the same pictures every weekend. And I know people that have that problem because they cover NASCAR, which is 36 weekends a year. They cover IndyCar, which is 18 weekends a year, or something like that. Formula One, which will be 23 weekends a year. It's hard to get a different shot of Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Vettel every single weekend because F1 purposely makes the paddocks and the tracks and the media pens look very similar to each other. So you have to try really hard to get something different. And when you come at a series, like I cover a handful of F1 races a year, a handful of IndyCar races, a handful of World Endurance Championship races, and most of the IMSA WeatherTech season. And when I can come at one of those series that I don't spend a ton of time in, you can come at it more creatively and you can see yourself trying to do something different than the other people are doing just because you don't know any better. You just see something differently because I don't do it every weekend. I see a lot of the really boring pictures that I take of, like, there was one particular picture I took in Austin last year where the Ferrari logo outside their hospitality was lit up in the morning sun, and it was just like perfectly lit on the prancing horse, nothing else. It was just a really nice shot of the Ferrari logo. And I know most of my colleagues probably would have walked past that picture because they've gotten it, 100 times that year. Like, they might all do it at the first race of the year, but then after that, you're like, all right, I've got this picture. I don't need to do it again. I don't need to do the same pictures week in and week out. And I come in and take a fairly boring picture, and I've seen it used even as recently as yesterday, a picture that I took in October. So, having that ability to come at something with fresh eyes is really beneficial. And I love the variety of motorsports that I get to cover, that it's not just one category. Being able to do a little bit of NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, World Endurance Championship, WeatherTech, Macau when it presents itself, just random stuff, just is variety is the spice of life, is really how I look at motorsport. It's all good.
Absolutely. So in terms of specifically then the upcoming Daytona 500, that being a new event for you, how do you see that, what everything you just spoke about is going to be applied directly soon coming up? So is that something you've actively thought about, maybe you're not going to go where every other photographer is, or you're going to try and apply your skill set in a new way, in a new environment? How are you approaching that directly?
Yeah, I'm really, really, really excited to cover my first Daytona 500. I've been to Daytona so many times, I don't even know how many times, but I've never been for a NASCAR event there, and it's very different than what we're allowed to do for like the Daytona 24 hour. Yes, they use the same, like most of the same oval, like they complete all the 100 yards of the oval essentially for the 24 hour. But then when you put 40 stock cars going around the oval, it's very different. And there's only, technically 4 corners is how NASCAR categorizes their turns. So your options are much more limited, but I can also take what I've used and learned from covering the Daytona 24 hour and certain times of year and sunlight, shutter speeds, panning, just coming at it with fresh eyes, and also not knowing the personalities as well helps a lot too. Like, I don't know, I mean, obviously I'm enough of a fan to know who the bigger names are, but it's a lot of fun to go to an event and not know who is the best car, who is the best driver. Like they're all kind of the same to me. And I know more about NASCAR than I do about, other sports. Like if I went to a British touring car championship race, I would cover it like everybody is the same level of importance, even though I know some person might win probably more likely than the others. But it's a lot of fun to go into something with completely fresh eyes, and have fun with it. I haven't really talked to my employer about a photography brief, but what we've talked about in the past is that I'll just be given free reign to go cover the event as I see the event, which is really what he wants, because I'm like the third guy on a team, and I can just kind of go and have fun and add to their client portfolio for the weekend with stuff that's just for fun. And that's really where it just makes it just really enjoyable to go to a race and just have fun with it.
I think that's really brilliant as well for new fans that are entering that environment, where I feel like, especially personally for me, trying to cover a bunch of different motorsport categories, it can be very intimidating when you're approaching a series that you don't know a lot about, but you're looking at it and like, well, these people, they know a lot about it. So you want to be careful not to get something wrong or to not have something in proper context. And I feel like a lot of people did that with Abu Dhabi, maybe people that didn't follow the whole Formula One season, but more just my own note in that. But what I mean is to be able to share in taking that new experience and that connection with someone who might be looking at, you as a photographer who's going there for the first time, and then someone who's watching it for the first time. You get to share in that learning, which I think is really cool. Do you think that that sense of novelty fades a little bit? You spoke in an article, or wrote in an article that you'd written for WTF1 about the Triple Crown of motorsport, and you said you've become jaded with certain events throughout the years, working, seeing maybe things that not everyone sees, can sort of dull down that fire a little bit, that passion for racing. Is that a more thing that's something that's a specific examples that stand out that cause that, or that jadedness happens over time, do you think?
I think it just happens over time. If you spend enough time around anything, you just become used to it. Like it takes a lot for me to really, see a supercar driving down the street and go, wow. I I still get that, but it takes a lot more for me to get there. Whereas, if a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or a Porsche 911, drives down the street, and, some, kid that doesn't get to see these cars as regularly as I do, they have a very different perspective and sense of of awe to it. Whereas, I'm at a racetrack and they have an entire Porsche corral or a Ferrari corral or a Lamborghini corral where you can go at the racetrack and you drive by, a parking lot with 40 Lamborghinis in it, 40 Ferraris, 40 Porsches. And you think to yourself, like, it's just the Ferrari parking lot. I don't need to, I don't really even have time or need to go wander around it, because I've got something better to do, or the race cars are more interesting to me. It takes a lot for me to really, just because of how long I've been doing this, it takes a lot for me to feel that sense of awe, and I still get it regularly. It just takes more for me to get there. And I hate that it happens, but it's like a good example with Formula One. This will be my 10th year covering Formula One. And at this point, like when the Haas car comes around, I know they're not in contention for a win. I know they're barely, if at all, in contention for points. And it's frustrating because the Haas car will come by me and the light will be absolutely stunning. It'll be amazing. It'll be everything I've ever wished for. And I'm thinking to myself, I wish it was Lewis Hamilton on track right now, or I wish it was Max Verstappen. You instead of seeing the picture as a picture, you wish that it was a picture of somebody else, because I know that it's not important that it's a Haas and that car is going to finish 19th or 20th in the race. And that no one's going to care. If I had gotten the same picture of Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen or Sebastian Vettel or whoever it is, just the engagement on social media, or just the impressiveness of the picture is just multiplied just because of who it is. And that's frustrating that I know, I'm aware of that. So it's nice, like I said, when I go to an event like a NASCAR race or a Macau Grand Prix where I don't know anybody. Like any of these kids in the F3 race in Macau could become a future Formula One champion. If they've got the money and they've got the talent, they can become a Formula One champion. But I treat, they're 14, 15, 16 years old. They're all the same to me. So you can shoot it all with the same like lack of knowledge, and all the pictures are just as important as the next.